Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the January 25th meeting of the Finance Committee to order. We do have a request from two members to join remotely. So under Section 7 of the Open Meeting Act, that is allowed if a quorum of the members of a public body is physically present as required by Section 2.01. A majority of the public body may allow a member of that body to attend the meeting by other means if the member is prevented from physically attending because of personal illness or disability, employment purposes, or family or another emergency. So today I have members DeCiani and member Garcia that are requesting to participate remotely. We have a motion by member Selman, a second by member Rutledge to allow member DeCiani and member Garcia to join us remotely. So thank you and welcome. And with that, can we please have a roll call?
Member Chaplin.
Here.
Member Chavez. Member Covert. Member Desart. Member DeCiani.
Here.
Member Eckhoff. Member Garcia.
Here.
Member Hart. Member Krajewski. Member LaPlante. Member Ozog. Member Pachalski. Member Renahan. Member Rutledge.
Here.
Member Schwarzy. Member Selman. Member Tornatori. Member Zay.
Thank you. We have a quorum. And with that, we move on to our presentation. We're going to be having our ARPA portal discussion. So welcome, Mary Catherine.
Hi, good morning. You can cue up the presentation. My name is Mary Catherine. I work in the finance department. I'm going to give Wendy and team a second to get the presentation going. I'll be talking today about the ARPA portal, long awaited for some of you. I want to say before we start that really the purpose today is for you to guide us. As a staff, we work for you guys, and we want this to be really what you want. With that said, I'd like for your input, but I want it at the end of the meeting. So if we can hold off questions during the PowerPoint, then at the end we can answer the questions and have the conversation about what you think, is good and bad about this. So with that said, we've done the best that we could from the staff perspective in putting together some suggestions about how we think the portal should work. Those suggestions really come from two places. One is based on our experience with CARES Act. We're better now as a result of CARES Act. We have a team that has been through this. I've got a great staff, Katrina Holman, who's here in the meeting, Jim Morrissey, Gerald, our entire executive senior staff, which spans the whole county, it seems like, and county board staff. Many people are participating in this. And while last time around we relied on the expertise of Guidehouse, I think our team is every bit as good or better now after 2 years of experience. They're smart, they're hardworking, and mostly they're really committed to the county for the long term. So they come from the county and they understand this process. So that is something that we take with us. Also, we've learned from what happened the first time around. Last week, we actually had a meeting with the townships. We've reached out to the park districts and the fire districts for their input on how we can make the program work better for them. So we think we're smarter. But we also need this process to be informed by the new requirements of ARPA. Next slide. ARPA is different than CARES. I know we've talked about it at some of the earlier meetings, but ARPA, it's in there for the long term, almost 6 years long, as opposed to CARES. When we first got CARES, the CARES information from CARES, we thought the program was going to be 9 months. And that's really what almost all the money was spent in 9 months. This act, we can still spend money on the immediate COVID response, but it's really focused on long-term recovery, equitable recovery, and it has a lot of requirements about the results and the evidence and program evaluations, not to mention our quarterly requirements. The feds want to see that whatever we spend our money on, that it works. And that takes time and money, and we have to have that information on the front end before we select projects. So next slide. Yeah, I would say the new portal, new act, new roles, new priorities. It's going to be different than what we had before. And as staff, when we thought about how we thought the new portal should be designed, one of the key things that we recommended was to have a competitive approach with it. There were some things that didn't go perfectly with CARES, and sorry. I don't know that I need to spend a ton of time talking about them with this board, because board was really part of that. We had, as a result of the across the board allocations that we did, we had some groups, some park districts, different groups that they really didn't want the money. So we don't want a situation where people don't want the money or submit applications that that are problematic and are extremely time intensive. This is federal money. It has federal compliance and reporting rules that are relatively complicated, and that's going to be part of the application process. And so with that said, from staff's perspective, we're recommending a competitive approach so that we can pick the best projects across the board, and that we'll have motivated applicants. When we were having one of our ARPA senior team meetings, Mary Keating is part of our senior team, and one of the things that she said that they had found with community services is that, quality applications result in quality projects. And that's really where we're coming from in this. We want people to succeed, but we want those that are out there that, that we're able to kind of pick from the best. So next slide. Here's a rough outline of what we're proposing. This is based in part on earlier input from county board, in which we talked about a $5 million allocation. That's actually what we've put aside in the program right now. I'm going to talk a minute about what we're envisioning for what it funds, the right side of the slide. I've grouped them in two kind of ways. One is immediate response. These are things that are consistent with what we did under CARES Act. This is, for my team, this is very known. We know what the problems are going to be, what the issues are. That would really be things like payroll and non-payroll expenses, like PPE, really, you can think about. And then the items 3 and 4 on this slide are capital and programs. These are items that are really going to fall under the ARPA rules with all the ARPA reporting requirements. So this is what we're envisioning. Who it serves is tagged here on the left, and that's also come from the county board in the past. I will say I can't read the footnote here, but I know what it says. It does mention that last time around with CARES Act, right now we're proposing with ARPA $5 million. Last time around with CARES Act, that for these 3 groups, we did a little over $6 million. So that was 3 for fire, 1 for park, and 2 for township under CARES Act. So I wanted to highlight that for you as we talk about, CARES and ARPA and the plan going forward. So next slide. There are a couple of places that we're looking for feedback on, key places where we're looking for feedback on. And even though we talked about at earlier board meetings, or the board talked about at earlier meetings, $5 million, as staff, we weren't completely sure about what the intent was with the $5 million. Did you want $5 million in one bucket where everybody can compete for that? Or did you want 3 buckets, a little bit more like what we did with CARES Act, which is option A, where you have $3 million for fire, $1 million for townships, and $1 million for park districts. So that's a big decision point that I want to go back to when we get to the end of the presentation. The slide kind of lays out what we think the advantages and disadvantages are. There's some advantages from the perspective of, in a competitive process, you might have some really great projects. Say you have awesome projects that come from the park districts. Well, they might be projects that we would rank very high because they serve, disproportionately impacted communities. I remember last time around with CARES Act, we had a project, Healthy Chicago, Healthy West Chicago, and that project is the type of project that we're looking for this time around. So, from staff's perspective, there are some advantages to the one bucket approach, but there's also the advantage for, in general, it does spread the money more evenly if you're going to do 3, 1, and 1. So again, this is something where we want to get feedback from you. Next slide. The next couple slides just walk through what we're envisioning for the 4 different categories in the portal program. This first one is very similar to what we did with CARES Act. We're talking about doing fire districts this time. This is really the way they did most of their money. Projects, it's payroll expenses are eligible for public health and public safety workers. But one caveat here is that the requirements are stricter than the CARES Act requirements. They do require that the public health and safety workers have direct physical contact with COVID cases. So there's a little more backup that's going to be required, but in general, this is pretty similar to what we did before. As a reference, I think everybody should have a copy of this presentation, but we did tag on the bottom right side how we plan to evaluate the projects. That's obviously open for discussion and input from this group, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time necessarily talking about that during this presentation, but if that's an issue for anyone, definitely bring that up after the presentation. Okay, next slide. Non-payroll expenses, again, very similar to what we did under CARES Act and the portal that we did last time around. This includes PPE, hand sanitizer, laptop for remote operations, air filters, plexiglass separators for offices, video conferencing equipment. You guys have seen this kind of thing before, so this should be well known. As with the payroll, we're looking at reimbursements only for these first 2 categories. Next slide. Capital. This is new, somewhat new, I guess. This would be COVID-related reimbursement or pay-as-you-go reimbursement on a limited basis, depending upon depending upon the project. We're looking for projects that are going to be capital construction or they can't include broadband. There are some ARPA requirements, including they're going to have to comply with prevailing wage. We need a project budget. We want projects that are project ready, that have third-party cost estimates. We don't intend to fund nonprofit pass-throughs for capital funding because they're funding sources that community service already has, the county, state, and federal programs that already fund this. So we want to ensure there's no duplication with what we're doing in other parts of the county. And these projects are going to have to comply with our quarterly expenditure reporting. So they're a bit more complicated for us. And I would call your attention to how we plan to rank these projects on the right-hand side. These are really what I'm envisioning as the ARPA, projects that have to meet the ARPA rules. So we want to see quality proposals. We want projects that have community impact. We need to see performance metrics for our reporting. We want projects that target, impacted groups, those that were disproportionately impacted by COVID. And also we want to leverage additional funding, meaning that we want to see projects that the locals have skin in the game. Those are going to be given priority. So if you're a township and you have a capital construction project that you want to do, if you can put some money into the project or you can get some money from other sources for the project, those are going to be prioritized. Next slide. The last slide talks about programs. And These would be programs for individuals, households, or community groups. As we've talked before about the ARPA rules, they have to be evidence-based, meaning that we have to go back and make sure that the projects actually worked. So we have to build in money into the proposals to do that analysis. We've got quarterly expenditure and metric reporting that's due on it, so that's part of the proposal. We need these projects to be targeting those that are disproportionately impacted. So we're talking about minority groups, senior groups, low-income groups, groups that really suffered under the pandemic. Those are the groups that we want to see in this type of proposal. We're recommending, that these projects run through June 30th, but of 2024, but we'll have a look at them if we have any proposals to go longer than that. And like the capital projects, we're not intending to fund pass-throughs to nonprofits because we're already doing a nonprofit. $10 million are going out to nonprofit through the DuPage Foundation, as you guys have already approved. So we really don't want duplication, separate rules and reporting with the existing ARPA program that we have. Just to point you to the right part of the slide, this kind of, I think, summarizes a bit of the left part of the slide, but we want to see good projects. We want projects that have positive impact on the community. We need to see those performance metrics, and also, as with the capital projects, we want projects that are targeting impacted groups and leveraging additional local funds. So that's a quick overview of the 4 types of projects that we're going to fund. If I can see the next slide. One of the things that's going to be key, I guess the second main decision point that we have for the board today is, are the projects, the individual projects, are they going to have caps on them? And this one is, I don't think that our team necessarily feels strongly about this one. This is a point that really needs to come from the board. With that said, we think that the first question that every local government agency is going to have is, how much can I ask for? So one thing you can see on the left part of, I guess, the left part of the slide is, it's really going to be contingent upon how you decide to bucket the program. Are you going to do 3 + 1 + 1? Are you going to do 5 million? That has some impacts on it, on the decision. We're proposing, you could do no caps. That's option A, or, option B, when we talked amongst ourselves, $100,000. This issue is more, it's less for salaries and the reimbursement of expenses. We have an idea that those are not going to be $100,000 requests for the most part, but it's really when you get into the capital construction projects and the programs that you're talking about this bigger amount of money. And so building on the experience that we had our staff, I know Jim Morrissey went back and looked at what the distribution was with all the requests that we had under CARES Act, and that was kind of came in at the $100,000 mark. We also talked with Mary Keating. As I said, she's on our senior team, and she also thought this was reasonable and consistent with what we've done with other programs across the community services agency. So this is, if you are going to go with caps, we're recommending a $100,000 point. At the bottom of the slide, you can see we sort of marked out what the pros and cons were. No caps, that's going to allow for some bigger projects, but overall fewer projects. Larger projects, but option A, larger but fewer projects. Option B, smaller projects but more projects. So again, I want to come back to this when we get to the end of the proposal and see what the board thinks about this and where you want to go with it. Next slide. A few points about eligibility. I just tagged on here to be eligible for the projects. The start date is going to be March of 21. The end date, projects have to be committed by December of 24 or expended, and expended by December of 2026. One thing that we want to change up is how we, I guess, communicate with the locals. Because one thing that happened last time around was that they got really far into the process and then we told them no. So this is an improvement that we want to make with the process. This time we're going to require, before anything starts, a letter of intent. So we know it's really especially for those last two types of projects, the capital projects and the programs. But everybody's going to have to fill out the letter of intent, but it's intended for those so that they can say, hey, I've got this program that does X. And before they fill out and do all the paperwork for us of the portal, we're going to tell them, hey, no, that's not okay. That's not eligible. So we think that's going to be good for them and it's going to be good for us. And also we're going to manage, I guess, these next two bullet points in the slide talk about, how we're going to manage the portal. And one thing that we did at Mary Keating's suggestion is we want to handle the questions that we get from all the applicants in a kind of fair and consistent way. Sort of like how we do the RFPs, which is we get questions in from one person, we send out the responses to all people. So everybody has the same information during the application while the portal is open, so that everybody has the same advantages. And second, we are going to provide technical assistance throughout the process. It's going to be competitive this time around, but we want to help people as much as we can on the front end while they're still working on their proposals, to tell them, hey, it's not eligible, this thing's a problem, there's a mistake with this. That's really our intent, to help these entities succeed. And lastly, once we select the winners, we are going to need an IGA similar to last time around, and that'll be crafted around what our agreement. They'll be standard. Connor has a ton of experience with them, so we don't think this is a big deal, but it is going to be part of our process. Next slide. Here's our draft schedule. As with last time, we plan to do individual webinars up front. The meeting that we had with the townships, I thought it was, they gave us some good suggestions, and we've talked internally about simply giving them more examples of what we think is going to work. I think that's going to be helpful for them. It is a new act. There are some new requirements. So I think that's going to be helpful on the front end. As I mentioned, we're going to have a letter of intent process, an LOI required before we start accepting applications. Going to have the applications open for, I think that's about 6 weeks. We're going to be sure and take plenty of time to review the applications and score them, and with in the intent of bringing back the applications to Finance Committee in mid-June. So that's the plan on the schedule. If it can, next slide. Oh, we're done. So with that, I can take questions.
Yes, I see Member Desart and then Member Pachowski.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it. And thank you for last year during the CARES Act distribution to townships and fire protection districts. You held a couple of Zooms with me and my township supervisors. So I really appreciate that. One thing I want to correct is that you said that they didn't want the money. And that wasn't true. What I heard from my township supervisors was that they, during the CARES Act distribution of funds, the townships had to put the money forward themselves and then get reimbursed from the county. And they just didn't have that kind of money in their checking accounts to be able to distribute the funds first and then get reimbursed later. So my question is that going to change this go around? Will we look at their plans and then cut them a check, or will they still have to make the initial expenditure?
What we recommended on this proposal is reimbursement based. So that problem would still exist. I put that out there, to the board. It's a pretty strong recommendation on our part because we want to protect the county. We have audit requirements, and once we send the money out there, we don't always get, with no strings attached, we don't always get the answers to our question. So reimbursement is a piece that really helps us to make sure that we're in compliance with the federal reporting. So that's my answer, but obviously we're here to work with, the program and design it how you want to. And I would say, as a caveat, we actually did have some park districts that didn't want the money. So in my mind, there were many that we worked hard with on the township side, but we did have a handful that were like, it's not worth our time. So yeah, we can keep talking about that. We're open to suggestions. We want to do what you want to do.
I understand sides that, we want the structure in place to make sure that the funds are used the way that they should be used. And I also understand the townships that they may not have $500,000 sitting in reserves just to spend outright. So those are my comments. Thank you.
So thank you. So we have Member Pachowski, Member Ozog, Member Krajewski, and then Member Zay. So Member Pachowski, go ahead, please.
Thank you. We have 9 townships, and I think it says something when 6 of the township supervisors have contacted me as to a $1 million not being enough. To a lot of people, township government's their only form of government. These people do food pantries, and I think we can't cap something because of a need. And I believe we ought to do one allocation, because I really believe that when you hear 6 of the 9 township supervisors indicating something is insufficient, $1 million for 9 townships is not nearly necessary. And if we have to go one allocation, I would rather do it that way, because we have more hands on it. And I don't think we need to cap this thing out. So the townships are very vocal on this, and they've come out and they're here today. So I'm just saying, I support township government. It's necessary. And $1 million for 9 townships the size of DuPage clearly is not sufficient. So we need to either fund it more or go with one allocation. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Ozog? Oh, your microphone, Mary. Microphone.
From one Mary Catherine to another, thank you for all your hard work on this. I really, really appreciate everything that you're doing. My question follows up to Member Polcharski's, because I'm looking at this. If we do an allocation, for instance, everyone is limited to 100,000, then we look at, let's say 50 projects out of $5 million. And my question is sort of related to this. Would this limit, say there's a capital project that's estimated to be 750,000. Would that put a township, for instance, say they want to renovate a structure that's used for community activities, would they be eligible to apply for buckets of $100,000 for the same project? And again, as Member Dessart pointed out, if you need to do a major capital project, you could be looking at, say, $750,000, and they very well would not have that money up front. So I understand your concerns in terms of reporting, but I'm wondering if this is practical for what kind of projects we may have coming forth and what the actual needs are. Is that something for us to consider?
Yeah, that captures it. And in my mind, I'm saying grants versus, reimbursement, if we want to call it that, meaning grant, we're going to give the money up front, versus no, hey, you have to submit everything to us and you pay and we reimburse. So an important point for this group, and a conversation amongst yourselves. So it maybe wasn't one of the 2 questions that I asked, but it is a key question for you guys to decide.
And we're not limited by the federal government to actually give out grants. We can do that, but what then that places a burden on us to make sure that the money is spent properly, and it is spent on the project following all the various rules,
Right.
et cetera. So it's an option still.
Right,
Okay.
It's an option. We can do it either way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Ozog. Member Krajewski?
Thank you. I think it answered part of my question, but I wrote down same thing. Don't want tax money. Member Dessart had brought up that you stated. I don't think that was the case. I think they didn't understand it. Maybe we didn't help them.
Yeah.
She brought up one of the reasons there, and you also just mentioned about the reimbursement, which I think you've now pivoted from. You said it's a requirement that you have to. We have to reimburse them for money that they spent and that's the rule, but I don't think that's the rule because we could give grants out. I think, aren't we giving pads like $2 million? They're not spending it first and then we're reimbursing them, right? We're giving it to them.
Sure.
So I don't think that is a federal rule. I think we can do it if we want.
Correct.
As you just mentioned, Member Ozog, it can, we're on the hook then. But if they don't come up with the receipts and spend it what they actually said.
Yeah, and again, this proposal, this is sort of our recommendation to you, best practice. What
No,
we would-
understood.
Yeah, but we can work it either way.
Sure.
Obviously, on the community services side, we are doing grants, under the DuPage Foundation side of things. So, we just have to ensure that
No, I
all of
understand
the,
Up on what Member Pachowski stated too, with regards to townships, I think we should be putting more money into the townships. So we're sitting here, whatever, January 25th, we've got this money in May. Have we given any money to food pantries?
we're still working. I
ARPA
know
money?
I've seen, and I'm sure Mary Keating is here, but I've seen, I think it's on the agenda today, Mary, the agreement with the DuPage Foundation.
Right.
So that's
I
ready.
understand that.
That's
So
ready
we've-
to go.
We've gone 8 or 9 months and we haven't given, any of the ARPA money out. You mentioned on the pass-through, we're not going to do pass-through entity, or the townships can't do pass-throughs to not-for-profits. The townships that do have the food pantries, they're eligible for that then, correct?
Yes, township food pantries would be eligible under
Okay,
this
'cause
portal.
it's-
And to answer your first question,
No, I already got an answer to my first one. I understand we haven't given any out.
not from the ARPA funds. We've given
Right.
significant funding from other
was directed
ARPA
to
and
ARPA.
CARES Act
Mhm.
allocations.
So again, since some of these townships do have food pantries and, I've been a vocal critic, I want to get money, it's 9 months now, and we still haven't got it out to the food pantries. I believe the townships are closer to the people, even than we are. So some of these townships actually, I can probably use it for their food pantries. And then have you guys looked at some of the other counties on what they're doing, how they're administering their programs?
I sit on a regional committee that is counties sort of statewide, and but it's focused on Northern Illinois. So I have a sense of how the money is being spent in other locations. It's really very much a mix. Some places, I think it depends a bit on what the demographics of your location are. So the Cook County program looks different than our program. The Collier County programs look a bit more similar to our program. Some of the programs, I know I have my staff here, Gerald Smith, we were looking at the NACO portal recently, and we could see that in some cases, the smaller entities had really just farmed out all of their money to nonprofit groups. So that was a decision that, if you're a municipality, for example, that's really where they went. Whereas bigger entities like DuPage, for example, they're able to make some investments in some bigger regional capital projects.
Yeah,
So
then one question, because Lake County had something out there in August. They had a plan that they already approved, nice 24-page report. I sent that to Nick and Jeff back in October, just as an idea. But in their plan, they talk about, and I don't know if this is in the federal rules, about community engagement. They say community input is a consideration when developing and selecting programs for funding allocation as it relates to the work already completed with the funds allocated. So is that part of what they want to do in Lake County, or is that a federal requirement that we need community input also? And should that be part of your scoring? I saw your scoring in there with regards to how you're scoring it. And I don't know if the rules require community input or if that's just something Lake County had put in. So I just like to.
it's recommended under the act. I don't know if you remember from the earlier allocation meeting that we had, that we actually put some money aside for that, to do some follow-up work on that. I will say that as we've worked through some of the details with other counties in what they call community engagement, they're actually referring in part to this process that you guys weighing in, their board and their staff working with community groups. So it can be a relatively broad. It's not just limited to surveys, but certainly some of the other collar counties, this is the process that they're referring to.
this is community input right now, what we're doing here, is what you're saying?
You
Really?
represent your community,
Okay,
yes.
all right,
So,
that's fine. Oh, that's fine. That's okay. We're having community input then. All right, but I just think that we should be allocating more for the townships because we're 8 months into it. I think the townships, had we given them money before, 6 months ago, they'd already have it out into the communities. They're closer to the people than we are. They administer programs within their, whether it's the food pantries, whether it's Dial Ride, they know the people in their communities. So I would, as Member Pachowski, and I think maybe Member Ozog pointed out, maybe we should put some more money for townships. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Krajewski. Member Zay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First thing, I think we need to separate these into 3 buckets. I mean, we've got, probably 40, 50 government agencies all competing. I mean, it just seems like the presentation is very contradictory. I mean, we want to be competitive. We want the best projects, but we want to put a cap on them. I mean, it's like the best of both worlds. Which also bothers me is that why we're doing this reimbursement. We're asking for a letter of intent. We're asking for an IGA, but we're not going to give them the money. If they don't meet those first 2, then the project wouldn't be eligible anyways. So why do we need to reimburse? I mean, the townships, the fire districts, the park districts all have budget constraints like we do. They don't have that money to come out of, whatever fund they have. They have tight budgets just like we do. But why would we then contradict that? Say, well, we're going to do a letter of intent so they don't get too far into this. So they send a letter of intent and we say, yeah, that project looks good. Then we go ahead and we do an IGA with them and do that. But then we're not going to give them the money. We're going to wait for them to spend the money in reimbursement. I mean, basically what you're doing is limiting the amount of projects they can do because they might have a good project, but they don't have $250,000 extra dollars sitting around in their reserves waiting to go. Or, they've allocated for something else. I mean, they're just like we are. That's why we're keeping money in reserves because we don't know what's going to happen. They're doing the same thing. So I just think we can do this better. I do think, I didn't know, when we said 5 million, I assumed it was 2, 2, and 1. I mean, the township allocation needs to be greatly increased at this point. They are closest to our people. They do the food pantries. If anyone's been out there, I know a lot of us have. They do great work out there. They see the people. I mean, I know a lot of us talk to, hopefully they'll reach out to their municipalities because they've been given money too. Hopefully they'll join us in helping their residents just like we are. But I think we need to look at that and greatly increase the amount to the townships.
Thank you, Member Zay. I have Member Schwarzy, Member Hart, Member Chavez, Member Ackoff, Member Renahan, Member Tornatori, and then Member Ozog. So
And
Member Garcia. So, oh, okay. Paula, since I didn't see you, can Member Schwarzy, do you mind if Member Garcia goes and then you can go? Thank you. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Member Chaplin. I know it's hard to see on the screen everybody that's going on, so I appreciate that. A couple points here. I too really want the township to get more money, and I do agree with Member Ozog and Sart that I think they do need to have the money come up front. I think that's been difficult. But in the same instance, I think we need to remember that during the lockdown, when we were doing, we were all at home, the fire district was doing impressive things like creating programs to go out and actually test people at home, and that was done. The park districts had to cut back everything, and if they had pools, they lost all that revenue, and so they've been hurt also badly with this. And I'm not saying that townships shouldn't get more money. That I wish everybody could get a lot more money. But I did see, because I am really involved with, because I chair the vegetable garden, which I know we all know. When everybody's locked down, they also were giving a lot of donations to the townships and the food pantry because that's what we could do. And so I know a lot of the funds for the township are quite high. I was able to actually do some projects because they're actually looking, how can we spend this money? So I'm not saying that they don't need the money, because they always need money, because what they do is very important in our local communities. But I do think that we do have to take into consideration all of the entities that we're talking about, the fire district, the park district, and the townships, because I think all of them have spent money protecting us in public safety during this time. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Garcia. Member Schwarzy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our goal here is obviously to help our residents, and it doesn't matter how we help them as long as we help them. So I do agree that the townships need more money. I certainly don't want to help them at the expense of the fire district, you know, who to this day, even today, are on the front line still dealing with this pandemic on a daily basis, and that's a fact. You know, then you throw in the park district. So I remember having this discussion about the $5 million back, you know, months ago, and I specifically asked, is $5 million enough? And I think our answer was just kind of based on what we did with the CARES money, and it seemed like to be enough at the time. I probably am going to propose that we increase this $5 million. I'm going to make a proposal that we increase the amount to $7 million, with $3 million going to the 14 fire districts, $3 million going to the townships, and $1 million going to the park districts.
Thank you, Member Schwerzy. Okay, Member Hart.
Thank you, Member Chaplin, and thank you, Mary Catherine, for the presentation. I agree with a lot of what my fellow members have said. Townships are on the forefront right now of helping the most vulnerable in our community, helping combat the mental illness scourge that's taking place, and they are closest to the people. So I agree with upping their amount, not at the expense of any other entity, but you know, they definitely need more money. I could even see a situation where they could make use of $4 to $5 million in their own right. Not saying that that's what we go with, we need to discuss, but definitely support them getting more money. Additionally, I don't believe we should have any caps on the projects. I think that might limit what we see and what might have value for our residents. And then lastly, I do support the grant approach and making that an eligible submission for this allocation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Member Hart. Appreciate your comments. Member Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of what I was going to say has been said. I'm in full support. I like Member Schwarzy's idea of upping that amount to $3 million for the townships. I also want to say that I like the bucket approach. I like to have like items grouped together, so we have townships that are pulling from that one bucket. I'd hate to see that bucket be all in one. And then lastly, I do like the idea of the grant process, and I'll just throw out there that we could do a 50-50 proposal where the first part of the money perhaps is in a grant form, so they have that seed money to get the project going. And then once they have submitted the appropriate receipts, that second gate opens for the other 50%. And that could maybe be in a reimbursement form. So that could be an option, and we could decide what those percentages may be, but that might be a happy medium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Chavez. Member Eckhoff.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would just hope that in your considerations that you'll take a look at whether or not some of these entities have already received money. You know, Milton Township is here and they haven't received any money so far because the people that were running the show before they took over didn't apply. So I think it's important to try and allow everyone to make use of the funds.
Thank you, Member Eckhoff. Member Renahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I'm kind of wondering, when I see this breakdown of 3, 1, and 1, I'm thinking you know something I don't about why fire districts need the money. And I guess what I'm thinking, it's probably a payroll situation, that they might be very different from the others.
I will say that it is based on CARES, and the fire district last time around did pull down all their money quickly, so they seem to have eligible expenses. That's really why we put it together that way.
Okay, because I mean, I'm thinking, you know, they are first responders, and I mean, I'd like to just give that money out right off the top of the bat, and maybe the others, I'm more in favor of a competitive approach, because I know I had difficulty with the townships, even that had the food pantries, having great difficulty in pushing that money out. The same with the park districts, because there's just, I think they didn't understand kind of the flexibility that they had, especially with CARES, and we're not going to have that same flexibility here. So I do like competitive process when it comes to park districts and townships. And yes, I like Member Schwarzy's idea of increasing to 3 million for townships, because as Member Pachowski points out, 9, you know, dividing $1 million by 9 isn't very satisfactory for any projects. And second point is, I'm wondering, I wonder if there's going to be some confusion in some of these projects, because I mean, should they apply for the DuPage Foundation pot, or should they apply for this pot? I mean, I think there's maybe some crossover, and I'm just wondering how we're going to communicate that.
we've tried to separate it out so that you're funneled into one pot or the other. So if you're a food pantry that's part of the township, this would be, you can still apply, but well, we would want you here, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's a very clear distinction. If you're a
Yeah.
501c3 nonprofit organization, you apply through the DuPage Foundation. If you're a unit of local government, being it's who's the recipient of the funds and who's operating the program. If it's operated by that unit of government, it goes through this portal. If it's a 501c3 charitable organization, it goes through the DuPage Foundation.
I guess I'm thinking of Hinsdale, we have the community house, which serves as our park district, but it also serves as our nonprofit,
Right, but
Outreach.
a park district is a taxing body, and so they're clearly not that. So community house would absolutely go through DuPage Foundation. And I think we can our timing is going to be very similar. So I think we'll have the opportunity to make sure that that messaging is very clear. I think it's an important question to raise. So I think we can really work on our coordinated messaging so it's very clear which one to be steered to. I think the letter of intent is also an opportunity to say, oh, wait, community house, no, you don't, you're not a park district, so we're going to put you over here.
Thank you, Member Renahan. We have Member Tornatori next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mary Catherine, and your committee for all the hard work you've done. This goes for everyone. My points for townships, fire districts, as well as the park districts. I agree with virtually everything that's been said. I look at this opportunity with the ARPA funds to kind of level the playing field for those three entities, because in a lot of ways under the CARES Act, they somewhat got short shrift because they were almost an afterthought. And because of the reimbursement constraints that we had, many of them, as we know, didn't have the money to do what they needed to do. I remember having a conversation with one of my townships, and I said, go out and buy $50,000 worth of canned corn. We've got money we want to give to you. Do something, because this is free money, so to speak. And even if you don't have the money, find it somewhere. So I think that it's important to take into consideration the fact that, unlike some of the municipalities who did very well under the CARES Act money, some even more than others, it's important to make sure that the townships, fire districts and park districts get their money, in particular fire and park districts as well, because they might not have the representation on this board that some of the townships do, but all of them are entitled to it. I'm definitely not for the reimbursement process, again, because I don't think that these entities have the cash to be able to do the things and then get reimbursed. Certainly, I'm not for giving anybody a blank check and saying, here's your money, go do what you think you need to do. But what I'm a little confused with about is how we're doing this. It appears to me that we're telling these three entities, at some point, we're going to give you X number of dollars. Now, go ahead and do your projects. For me, it makes more sense to do it the other way around. Have them come to us and tell us what their projects are and how much they're going to cost. At which point then we'll know what those allocations may need to be, how much money we have set aside, and perhaps maybe we'll give them less or more than we would have otherwise allocated, depending upon the projects that they have and their viability and their credibility. I know it's important that we have to set aside certain segments of money for the entities, but I do think it's more important to know what they're going to do and how much they're going to spend before we decide what we're going to give them. I mean, it's like going to, this isn't an allowance where we're just going to our kids saying, here's X number of dollars, go spend it how you want. I'd rather, have my kids tell me what you want, how much you're going to spend, how you're going to earn it, and then I'll decide what I'm going to give you. That's the kind of way I look at it. Am I missing something?
Well, the letter of intent is going to give us an idea up front about how it's going to play out. But if we, I think your original question was more a fundamental budget question. which is before we decide, is it going to be 5 million? Is it going to be 7 million? Is it going to be 5, 3 + 1 + 1? Let's take all of their applications and see what's out there and then set the budget. That's a bigger budgeting question for the entire county and for the program.
Yeah, in a
you
perfect
leave
world,
yourself-
that's what in a perfect world, that's kind of what I'd like to see so that I knew what we were doing, how we're dealing with that.
Yeah,
Now,
and-
whether that's practical or not is for you to tell me.
Yeah, I think that, we made some best guesses about what we thought eligible expenses were going to be, but we are going to have some more expenses out there with COVID. We don't know how long this pandemic is going to go on. And so it is foreseeable that you could have very large ongoing requests from these 3 groups that would, be significantly more than what we've talked about to date. And so is that really the way we want to spend the balance of what we have out there? Again, a bigger picture policy question. I might let Nick respond to it. That's my response.
So a lot of the things that have been brought up today were brought up in our internal discussion group. And I'll tell you, Member Tornatore, exactly that. Our thought is we're going to open the portal, we're going to have the projects, and there's an initial amount that we kind of have earmarked for this, but our thought is if we get, let's say, double the projects that we think are really good projects, we're going to come back to this board and say, listen, there was 5 million or 7 million allocated. We feel that based on our scoring system, there's still 2 million of really good projects out here. We would like the board to consider maybe an additional 2 million. And so it's going to be based more on a project driven approach that we fully anticipate. We want to see what the universe of projects is coming in. We'll score it. And then, this is just an initial placeholder. The projects may very well dictate that's all in, it's 10 million. I don't know. And we'll come back to you, and then that'll be the decision of the board. I will tell you as you decide, they're right now, assuming the 75,000 that is on the board today for consideration for Choose DuPage, you have at your disposal 35,040,000 still unallocated. And that includes the 5 million initially allocated. So theoretically, if the board says, hey, let's go the 7 million, 3, and 1, we will simply move that route. But I still wouldn't say that that's the end all be all, because we might get projects totaling 10 million and we'll come back to you and you can consider it at that point.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I don't doubt for a minute that you had that in mind. I think it's important to make sure that we fund the projects that are viable and not lock us in. But my whole point is I don't think that we got to lock ourselves into a cap or a dollar figure, not knowing what those projects are and the viability of those projects. Because someone might come to us with a project today that they decide in a month isn't really as important as they thought it was going to be. Or maybe they're going to get some money from another source and they won't need as much from us. So I'd like to see us have that kind of flexibility. But those are my points. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Tornatore. And thank you, Nick. I have Member Ozog and then Member LaPlante.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, Member Torrentore, you got to my point, because I think what we're looking at here, I am hearing that I think $100,000 allocation per project is definitely out the window, because I think we all have a sense of what's necessary. And there's definitely a difference between PPE payroll type projects versus capital projects, which will have ongoing effects. And obviously, if our townships, for instance, had that money, they would have fixed various capital projects that need to be fixed. So I think the problem, or what I'm hearing, is that we need to hear, you're going to have the webinars first, and then you're going to have letters of intent. And perhaps before we even accept applications, those letters of intent and a quantification of what they're looking for needs to be brought back to us, because I think like I said, we've gotten rid of the $100,000 cap. I don't think we're going to put a cap on things, but I think that will give us a better sense of what's out there in terms of needs and what their impact is on the entire community that they serve. And we can hopefully quantify in terms of a food pantry. How many people do you serve? and perhaps get an anticipation of how many people you plan to serve going forward. We are not, unfortunately, ever going to be rid of the need of food pantries. So that's a COVID-related issue, but I think it's also a community issue. So I think we need to have, maybe even before the application, you come forward to us again with an idea of what you've received. Now that all the townships, all the park districts, fire districts have had their webinars, gotten their information, understand the overall qualifications for their projects, and then we can make a better decision about and I agree with Member Schwarzy, perhaps 7 million, perhaps 10 million is what we need to be looking at. So, but again, thank you we need to talk these out, but I don't think we have the information we need yet until we've actually heard from these government entities.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ozak. Member LaPlante.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mary Catherine and staff for this presentation and for all the hard work you put into it. I think it sounds like we're really all on the same page. And for sure, I love the idea that Nick brought forth, that this is a fluid process and that there is not a hard stop at 1 and 1 and 3 or 5 total, because to everyone has said some version of this, but 9 townships for a county of almost 1 million people. We need more resources. And that's what's beautiful about the work we do here at the county level, is that we are poised to help everyone right in our backyards. And those are the townships. So I'm happy to support and echo the request for more money for the townships to separate the separate buckets, and to keep that process fluid and base it on projects that are submitted. I think that's our best way of being truly helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member LaPlante. Member Desart.
Thank you. I too support giving the townships more money, Madam Chair. And I also just really want to underscore the fact that after having talked to our township supervisors in my district, they don't have the money in reserves to pay for these projects. So we really need to consider getting the letter of intent and then giving out grants.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate all your comments, questions, very good dialogue we've had so far this morning. So let's summarize it. So giving our staff direction. I think to begin with, we want to just for now up that bucket to 7 million. And with that's just to start. If we get more projects in that are more and we need 10 million, but let's up it to 7 right now. I think everybody is in agreement with that. Okay. I think we all agree that we want a grant program. So we understand that the townships, park districts, fire districts, they don't have the upfront money. So I would think that we want to, after we get the letter of intent, do more of a grant program.
Could I make one suggestion
yes.
for consideration? We could easily do the grant program for maybe the final 2, the capital and the programmatic. And we could do reimbursement for the payroll and the small minor expenses out there, which would greatly ease the burden for the paperwork. So it might be kind of the happy medium for maybe the townships can do the programmatic or the big capital, and we can do it in a grant type of thing once they're approved as a project. But then the first 2, when people are looking for payroll reimbursement, which they've already paid for, get the paperwork up front. So that might kind of be that happy medium.
Everybody agree with that? Okay. Okay, great. And so do you have your direction? Do you have your directions that you think you feel comfortable going into open the portal?
And from what I'm hearing, separate buckets, 3, 3, and 1. It would be obviously the grant for the final 2. And we may very well come back to this board for more money at that point, but right now we'll allocate 7 million.
Great.
Is there any other direction?
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and with that, we move on to public comment. And I am advised we have some public comments this morning. So our first public comment, we have Diane Hewitt from Lisle Township.
Thank you. Chair Chaplain. The government of Lisle Township, like all the township government entities, are on the front lines of COVID-19. We primarily service a community that has been disadvantaged economically. We feed over 1,100 people every month, offer tens of thousands in cash assistance, give counseling, and offer a variety of community services. We are where people go when they lose their jobs, are hungry, are sick, and need our help. After 2 years of COVID-19, our resources to keep people alive have been taxed. If we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs for humans, what townships do as a job is at the top of the pyramid. So if you invest in the townships, you will reap societal benefits that will pay outsized dividends. The municipalities have received significant funding, and if you thought they would give it to us, that did not happen. In Lisle Township, there are 5 municipalities, and we have not gotten anything from them. We look forward to this renewed program as we know it is worth our time and that our community really needs help from anywhere. In Lisle Township, we are extremely space poor due to a mold issue which destroyed 2/3 of our township space a few years back. We have never recovered from that. Capital expenses are our top priority. We really look forward to your help and we encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have John Menino from Milton Township.
Thank you so much for having us today. Great friends of the county, appreciate you. Just want to say, John Menino, Milton Township Supervisor, that Milton Township does need our ARPA funds. And we need to keep our community safe. The township itself has some issues with the building. I've shared some of my concerns with some of you on the county board, and I appreciate you guys taking my calls and listening to my voicemails. There's some structural issues as well. I'm so thrilled to have Alex with me today. He's going to explain a little bit more about that. So I'd like to go more into the expansion of the GA and the food pantry services. We've seen huge increases, massive increases. The cry outs, the townships are now known for helping, and people are coming in the door. People are calling. They know their neighbors are hurting and suffering. So we know that the increase is at the worst time when the expected federal and state slowdowns to aid these are coming as well. So we just really need to be prepared. The decrease in the spread of COVID-19 throughout their township offices, we just went through it, and every one of you have seen massive amounts of people with this new variant, and the township was wiped out for an entire 2 days. And it was heartbreaking to see that we had to put a phone number on our front door. If you need help, call us. And of course they did. So I just want to make mention that that was heartening to me. If there's issues inside our building and our building is sick, how do we cure that without going over our budget amount and doing our levies and everything? We're not trying to hurt our community at that as well. So this would really help us. I also wanted to say that many of you know in my township, especially the board members, that we're looking to expand some of our services, our senior services and our veteran services. Very near and dear to me. I just want you guys to know that this is very much something that we're moving forward with, and this fund could extremely help with that expansion. So that being said, I want to end with saying that townships, we're hoping and praying that we're not going up against the fire who we love and respect, and the park districts who we love and use their services in the forest preserve. We don't want to go up against them and go after their funds and their funding. You guys have said it perfectly in your ways that everybody needs. Now is a time to help. I thank you very much. I also thank the board, Mary, your wonderful Zoom meeting that we had. Thank you. That was wonderful. That's it for my comments, and I appreciate every one of your efforts and work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Randy Raymie from Wayne Township.
Good morning, Madam Chair and ladies and gentlemen of the board. Appreciate the time here this morning. Right off the bat, Ms. Wells had that conversation with us last Friday, which I certainly appreciate. And we were able to discuss the issues that came through, and we found out with the CARES Act funding and what we want to go forward with here with the ARPA funds. In the CARES Act, the townships were given $2.25 million, $225,000 apiece. 5 of the 9 townships reached that $225,000 level. In fact, some of us were able to go over because in our agreement with the county, we knew that some of the townships may not be able to reach that number. We wanted to have access to those funds because other townships were going to go over that number. In fact, Aston Township approached $500,000 in that expenditures. And the unfortunate part is that apparently that part of the discussion didn't get through to staff, and we were unable to continue funding throughout that program. So in fact, I think they stopped at about 240,000. Wayne Township stopped at 240,000. And, we had more needs. We were open through the pandemic. The food pantry was distributing through the pandemic, and we're going to continue to be open and distribute as this pandemic continues on. So we appreciate that you're offering funds to townships again, and we are thinking forward. This is going to continue, so we're going to have a continued need. And all of our townships now are looking at being able to access these funds better than they did during the CARES Act funding period. We serve, and as was mentioned before, we serve the same people you two, all 920,000 residents in DuPage County. We're divided up in our 6x6 groups, 6 miles by 6 miles, except Downers Grove. I don't want to shortchange them. They're a little bit larger. But we're out there every day. We're on the front lines. We are helping people every day. We've seen our numbers quadruple through the pandemic. Your neighbors are coming to us for help who may not have asked for help before. Wayne Township in itself was able to access a HUD grant through the county to expand our food pantry before the pandemic hit. And we were lucky that we got that accomplished. But now we're full. We're seams are busting. We need more room because of the continued increasing numbers that are coming through. And we understand that some of the townships didn't get to that $225,000. And we knew that going into, that's why we thought we had a pool to access for those who would. But in our discussions with the other supervisors, they now have a better understanding. They know how to move forward, and we look forward to these CARES Act funds. What I would suggest, and it seems to have already reached that point, is that there's 3 pots of funding that you're going to look at. I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize. I didn't see pot. I'll wrap this up. I apologize. I would suggest $500,000 for each township in a pool that can be accessed if some townships aren't going to make that number, that the rest of them will. We know it's going to happen as we continue through these next 4 years. We have the food pantries, senior centers, veteran services, youth and family services, mental health boards, transportation that are already being taxed. And we would appreciate your consideration as we move forward. And as always, we are here to continue the conversations with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And our last speaker we have today is Alex Hines with Milton Township.
Good morning, everybody. I'm the manager at Milton Township, Alex. Just to piggyback a little bit on what Grant started to go into, our building has not had a lot of the big capital projects addressed in a very long time. Our previous administration, they didn't put a lot of funding into fixing our roof or a lot of other issues. And with that, we have a lot of big ticket capital projects that are not optional, that we have to address. We just recently got quotes. It's going to cost us nearly $500,000 just to get our building back into good condition again, working condition. That doesn't include any other improvements we might need for COVID or anything else. With that, we desperately need these funds. Our total budget's roughly $2 million. If we're not going to get the funding from ARPA, it's going to have to come out of our personal pocket, and it's going to be at the expense of our other programs. So with that, I just urge you guys to give townships more funding. We desperately need it. There's no shortage of need. And I think that goes for saying with all other townships in DuPage County, but especially Milton Township. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate your public comment. And I just want the townships and the fire districts to know we are a team, right? Because, and I love this acronym, because together everyone achieves more. So we want to work with you guys, and we want to, you know, help you out the best that we can. So thank you for your public comments today. I really appreciate it. And I do appreciate the board's really great input and discussion. So thank you. And with that, we move on to Chairwoman Remarks. Oh, what was that? Do we have any written public comment? No. Okay, great. Yeah, and with that, we move on to Chairwoman Remarks. So this morning, I hope you'll join me in offering our most sincere thanks to Dana Mundell for her outstanding work as the Finance Committee Secretary. Today is Dana's last Finance Committee meeting. She's accepted an opportunity in the private sector as an executive assistant. So Dana's been with the county since she started in the Building and Zoning Department in 2016. And as you recall, she took over as Finance Secretary in the fall of 2020. I know I speak for the whole board when I say it's been a pleasure to work with you, Dana, and that we sincerely wish you all the best. So thank you very much.
No, we're not letting her go.
I know. So, but we're happy because she has a great opportunity.
Who's going to be
Wish her
baking
all
now?
the
What's going on?
best.
I'm kidding.
So thank you, everyone. So that concludes my comments. And with that, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from Tuesday, December 14th? I have a motion by member Pachowski, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. We move on to budget transfers. Can I have a motion on FIRR 5922, resolution budget transfers 12522 from various companies and accounting units? I have a motion by member Krajewski, second by member Chavez. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. With that, we move on to procurement. We have member Krajewski taking for finance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIP 0052-22, recommendation for the approval of contract purchase order to Casco International, doing business as CA Short Company, to provide our employee service awards for milestone anniversaries.
I have a motion by member Krajewski, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We move on to economic development. Member Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on EDR 005522, a resolution for the DuPage County Convention and Visitors Bureau. This is their designation of representation for grant purposes.
I have a motion by member Chavez. Do I have a second? Second by member DeCiani. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Move on to Health and Human Services. Member Renahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on HHSP 4922, contract purchase order to washboard machinery for laundry equipment repair and parts for the Care Center, February 1st, 2022 through January 31st, 2023, not to exceed $35,000.
I have a motion by member Renahan, a second by member Pachowski. Discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Member Renahan.
Thank you. I move approval of HHSP 4822, contract purchase order to KCI USA, DBA 3M Medical Systems for rental of wound vac therapy system and medical supplies for wound care and skin care for the Care Center, January 26, 2022 through January 25th, 2023, not to exceed $46,000.
I have a motion by member Renahan, a second by member Desart. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Renahan. We move on to judicial public safety. Member Renahan.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of JPSP 4722, contract purchase order to Northeast DuPage Youth and Family Services to provide services to youth who are at risk of domestic violence and trauma. This is for probation and court services, period February 1st, 2022 through January 31st, 2023, not to exceed 38,000.
I have a motion by member Ranahan, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Member Ranahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of JPSP 4522. This is approval of contract to Curry Motors Commercial Center for the purchase of 7 2022 Ford Utility Police Interceptors for the Coroner's Office, not to exceed $308,518. 2 vehicles would be funded through the general fund and 5 funded through the Coroner's Fee Fund.
I have a motion by member Ranahan, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Ranahan. With that, we move on to Public Works and member Ozark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move for approval of PWCO 000422, PWP 0106A21, amendment to resolution PWP 010621, issued to Visu Sewer of Illinois LLC to supply additional CIPP sanitary sewer lining for Public Works to increase the contract in the amount of $4,104.75, taking the original contract amount of $241,780 and resulting in an amended contract total amount not to exceed $245,884.75, an increase of 1.7%.
I have a motion by member Ozark, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Ozark. We move on to technology. Member Selman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on TEP 51-22, a recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to SHI International for hardware and licensing of network equipment to expand the courthouse wireless system. It's a total amount of $92,758.42 per lowest responsible bid, and this is an ARPA item.
I have a motion by member Selman and a second by member LaPlante. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, member Selman. That we move on to transportation. Member Potowski.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I would move to approve DTR 004922, a resolution for an additional appropriation for impact fee service area 5 fund Milton Township for $500,000.
I have a motion by member Potowski, a second by member LaPlante. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Potowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd move to approve DTP 0050-22, recommendation for approval contract to Altoffer Industries, Inc. to furnish and deliver 1 Caterpillar mini hydraulic excavator for the Division of Transportation for a contract not to exceed $166,150.
I have a motion by member Potowski, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, member Potowski.
Thank you.
We move on to finance resolutions. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIR 0050-22, resolution recommendation for the amendment to the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, HHS American Rescue Plan Act grant, moving it from $8,482,200 to $6,505,455.
I have a motion by member Krajewski, a second by member Renahan. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIR 0054-22, which is a resolution for additional appropriation for the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity Disaster Recovery Grant, $67,320.
I have a motion by member Krajewski, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIR 0065-22, which is a resolution for authorization to transfer $67,175 in budget to Circuit Court Clerk for fiscal year 22.
I have a motion by member Krajewski, a second by member Renahan. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIR 0066-22, resolution grant agreement between the County of DuPage and the DuPage Foundation for DuPage County ARPA not-for-profit grant program in the amount of $10,600,000.
I have a motion by member Krajewski and a second by member Renahan. Any discussion from the body here? Okay, I do have some discussion on this item. I was looking through the agreement with the DuPage Foundation. And in this section where it has application evaluation team, I thought it was important to have a member of the county board on this evaluation team, similar to how we did the Choose DuPage grants. I know as finance chair, I sat on that evaluation team, and I thought it was important that we have a county board member serve on the evaluation team. So I put in front of you some amendments. And I think the amendment that is most applicable would be that the application evaluation team shall include county representatives. The county representatives shall be 1, the director of community services, 2, the chair of health and human services, and/or a designee appointed by the county board chairman. So we're just adding in that HHS chair. And then that chair would continue with, the next election cycle, and whoever is the HHS chair at that time would then, take the spot of the current chair. So yes, member Schwarzy.
I do like this idea. It makes sure that we have representation on this board and making sure that these funds are representative of what we want. And so do you need a motion or anything for this, or?
Yeah, we will need a motion to make the amendment. Yes. So
I would like to make that motion.
okay, thank you. Do I have a second on the amendment? Okay, second by member Ozog. Member Desart, you have more discussion? Yes.
Thank you. I like this amendment, this change a lot. I would rather have it just say the county's director of community services and the chair of health and human services committee, and just take off or designee appointed by the county board chair.
Mary, do you want to explain that?
I just wanted to make a comment on that. You had indicated the language would be and or. If you had the and in there, that has 3 representatives, which I don't think the intent is. I think the or is more meant for my position. So maybe it's just a matter of wording, so that the chair of health and human services, and then the director of community services or a designee, so that if for some reason I was unable to serve on that committee, or you decided that a different member of senior staff or someone else, some other county
Yeah,
employee.
and that makes sense. Thank you, Mary. So we're moving this or designee up to the county's director of community services or designee appointed by the chair and the chairman of health and human services. I could go with that
Yeah,
change,
okay,
sure.
okay.
Thank you.
And I just want everybody to know, I did talk with Mary yesterday. We talked about it. She contacted the foundation, and the foundation's fine with the change. Mary's fine with the change. So Mary, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to change, besides adding that up there, I think it should say a staff designee appointed by the county board chairman, so that we are appointing 2 people. One is the Health and Human Services Committee Chair, and the other person is yourself, or
a staff designee.
Then specify that it's staff.
Or a staff designee appointed by the county
A
board.
staff designee appointed by the county board chair.
Okay, member Salmon.
Thank you. Would it be possible to pass this as is and get a rewritten version of the amendment for us to consider in passing county board?
We can. Connor helped me with this last night. He was right. Connor wrote these amendments up for me. So yeah, so we can, I can have them revisited, and we can make the corrections to the amendment. We'll have it for county board then.
Perfect, thank you.
Does that mean move to table it?
Yeah, we'll move
to
to table the,
table it for 2 weeks.
no. Can we make the amendment in county board? Yeah.
No.
Oh, Lisa, our state's attorney, is telling us that we can make the amendment in county board. So
we'd be passing it as presented.
as presented here, and then we'll make the
And then
amendment in
amended on
county board,
county
and we'll
board
get that
floor.
language then, Lisa. Okay. Great, thank you so much. Okay, so although we're taking the amendment, can you remove your, right. Greg is withdrawing his motion, and Don, who seconded it? Don, did you second it? Okay, great, thank you.
And then you had another change to make?
No, that was it. we're just voting back on the original item. No, that one is just, that was the second option that we're not going to consider because it's not, we can't have 3 people on that. Okay.
We can have as many people as we want.
We do have a motion and a second on the original item. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIR 006720-22, resolution revision to the personnel budget. ARP item.
I have a motion by Member Krajewski, a second by Member Salmon. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIR 0068-22, which is a resolution for appropriation of $75,000 to choose DuPage to implement and manage a supplier diversity program.
I have a motion by Member Krajewski, a second by Member Desart. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIR 0069-22, which is a resolution for approval of an agreement with Choose DuPage to implement and manage the supplier diversity program in the amount of $75,000.
We have a motion by Member Krajewski, a second by Member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. And we move, thank you, Member Krajewski. We move on to informational and Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place and receive on file informational items: A, payment of claims; B, wire transfers; and C, appointments.
I have a motion to receive and place on items under informational A, B, and C with a second by Member Chavez. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much, Member Krajewski. We move on to old business. Do we have any old business? Member Zay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, there's a request here from District 6 for Healthy West Chicago. This fell through the cracks. This is a program they have. They're working through United Way of Chicago. This is a big project they have. It's not a really big ask. It's $15,000 over 3 years. It's $5,000 a year. We thought it was funded originally through when we did the ARPA funding, but it kind of fell through the cracks. We would like to bring that forward at the next finance meeting for approval.
Absolutely.
Through the ARPA funds.
Yes. Why don't we, can you send staff all the information and we'll make sure it gets on the next agenda for finance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Member Zay. Any other old business? Member Desart.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that oftentimes we receive presentations live as they are, and I just wanted to let Jeff Martinowitz know that I really, really appreciate getting the presentation ahead of time so we could review it and then come up with questions based on that. So I really appreciate getting presentations ahead of time for our review. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Desart. Any other comments under old business? Okay, seeing none, we move on to new business. Any comments under new business? Okay, seeing none. I am advised we do have executive session this morning, correct? Yes, so we're going to ask all the relative people to leave the room for our executive session. And yeah, can we have a motion to go into executive session? We have a member by Member Desart and a second by Member Ozak to go into executive session. Yeah, go ahead.
Pursuant to Open Meetings Act, collective bargaining matters. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. I'll see you guys in a few minutes. We have to set up with IT. Let's have a roll call as we enter back into open session.
Member Chaplin.
Here.
Member Chavez. Member Covert. Member Desart. Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff. Member Garcia.
Here.
Member Hart. Member Krajewski. Member LaPlante. Member Ozog. Member Pachowski. Member Renahan. Member Rutledge. Here. Member Schwarzy. Member Selman. Member Tornatori. Member Zay.
Okay, great. We have a quorum. And with that, can I have a motion on FIR 006122, resolution authorizing the contract with International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 399. We have a motion by Member Tornatori, a second by member Renahan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by member Swarzy, second by member Desart. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, see you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you. Great, thank you so much.